When we think of World War II, we picture iconic battles, Normandy, Iwo Jima, or the deserts of North Africa. But in 1943, a brutal and largely forgotten battle raged on American soil, far from the headlines. On a remote, frozen island called Attu, part of Alaska's Aleutian chain, U.S. and Japanese forces clashed in one of the most savage confrontations of the war. Isolated by distance and buried in fog, Attu was more than just a battlefield. It was a test of endurance against nature itself. Few Americans had heard of it, and fewer still remember it today. But what happened there was a pivotal moment in U.S. military history, the only land battle of World War II fought on incorporated American territory. This is the story of the Battle of Attu, a chapter of courage, cold, and quiet sacrifice. Attu is part of the remote Aleutian Islands in Alaska, windswept, rugged, and rarely mentioned in war strategy. But in June 1942, just months after Pearl Harbor, Japan seized Attu and nearby Kiska, bringing World War II directly onto U.S. soil. It was the first foreign occupation of American territory since the War of 1812. While the U.S. reeled from losses in the Pacific, the Japanese quietly fortified the islands, hoping to divert American forces and secure a northern flank. The invasion shocked military planners and stirred fear at home, proof that the enemy could reach the homeland. But due to the remoteness of the Aleutians, the threat was overlooked by many. While the world focused on North Africa and the South Pacific, a brutal and frozen front had silently emerged in the farthest. In May 1943, nearly a year after Japan's occupation of Attu, the United States launched Operation Landcrab to take it back. Over 11,000 American troops, most from the 7th Infantry Division, landed on the island under treacherous conditions, battling more than just an enemy. The environment was unforgiving. Freezing temperatures, dense fog, snowdrifts, and jagged terrain made movement nearly impossible. Many of the soldiers had trained for desert warfare, not Arctic combat. Their gear froze, visibility was near zero, and the wind howled without end. Basic survival became a challenge. Medical teams struggled to treat frostbite and exposure. Troops slipped on ice, lost their footing on cliffs, and faced supply shortages almost immediately. The island offered little shelter and no comfort. Attu was not just a battlefield, it was a frozen gauntlet, and ahead of them waited a determined enemy, dug into the heights. Leading the Japanese forces on Attu was Colonel Yasuyo Yamasaki, commanding approximately 2,500 soldiers. Though heavily outnumbered, his troops held a major tactical advantage, the island's steep ridges and rugged high ground. Well-prepared defensive positions were carved into the cliffs and blended seamlessly with the snow-covered landscape. Thick fog concealed their movements, and their quiet, disciplined tactics made them difficult to detect. American soldiers advancing uphill encountered sudden bursts of fire from hidden locations and carefully placed artillery. The defenders used the terrain to slow every advance, striking swiftly and retreating back into cover. The fog, the mountain, and the well-positioned resistance worked together to make each American step forward, a costly effort. Yamasaki's forces were committed to their mission, determined to hold Attu regardless of the odds. Beyond enemy fire, American troops faced an equally relentless foe, Attu's brutal environment. The island was a frozen wilderness, blanketed in snow, lashed by wind, cloaked in heavy fog. Constant rain and sleet soaked uniforms, turning the ground to thick, freezing mud. Temperatures hovered near freezing, and many soldiers lacked proper cold weather gear. Tents collapsed under gusts, supplies froze, and communication lines broke down. Medics struggled to treat widespread cases of frostbite and exposure. Some men became disoriented in the fog, unable to find their way back to camp. There were no roads, no trees, and no natural shelter, just open tundra and sharp, icy ridges. For many, the elements proved more punishing than the combat itself. On Attu, survival demanded strength. Despite the unforgiving landscape and strong opposition, American troops continued their slow and determined advance across Attu. Each day brought harsh weather, limited visibility, and steep terrain. Snowfields, icy ridges, and dense fog made every movement physically and mentally exhausting. Communication broke down frequently, and units were often separated in the mist. Still, the soldiers remained focused on their mission. They carefully moved from position to position, clearing obstacles and securing ground under challenging conditions. Morale remained steady as they pressed forward, determined to restore control of American territory. Progress was measured in feet rather than miles, and each gain came through careful coordination and resilience. By late May, the situation for the Japanese forces on Attu had become critical. With supplies exhausted and defeat looming, Colonel Yamasaki made a final, desperate decision. On the morning of May 29, 1943, he led a sudden charge against American positions, a bold and overwhelming attack through thick fog and rugged terrain. Over 1,000 Japanese soldiers advanced rapidly, aiming to break through U.S. lines in a final coordinated effort. The surprise was effective at first, pushing deep into American-held areas and disrupting rear positions. Support personnel, engineers, medics, and clerks were forced to take up arms. The fighting that followed was chaotic and intense, much of it at close range and near zero visibility. By the end of the day, the charge had been repelled, and nearly all the attacking forces were lost. It was one of the most dramatic moments of the Aleutian campaign and marked the end of major resistance on Attu. Although the U.S. ultimately reclaimed Attu, the cost was high. Over 3,800 American service members were listed as casualties, including those who were injured, suffered illness, or were impacted by extreme weather. Many faced lasting effects from frostbite, exposure, and exhaustion. The cold, fog, and rugged terrain were as punishing as the combat itself. Rescue and evacuation efforts were often delayed due to weather, worsening the toll. For the 7th Infantry Division, the Battle of Attu became one of the most difficult engagements of the Pacific Campaign. Yet, the story received little national attention. Overshadowed by larger battles in Europe and the Pacific Islands, the hardship and bravery shown on this frozen battlefield were largely forgotten. Still, those who served remembered it vividly. A chapter marked by perseverance in one of the war's most remote and challenging theaters. The Battle of Attu had a significant impact beyond the island itself. It marked the removal of the only active enemy presence on incorporated U.S. territory during World War II, restoring a sense of security to the American public. Strategically, retaking Attu eliminated the northern threat to U.S. shipping lanes and prevented the further expansion in the North Pacific. Soon after, Japan abandoned nearby Kiska, ending their occupation of the Aleutian chain. The harsh lessons learned during the battle also influenced U.S. military preparedness, highlighting the need for Arctic training, cold weather gear, and adaptability in extreme environments. Though the battle was rarely spotlighted, it played a key role in tightening the American perimeter and allowing focus to shift toward larger offensive across the Pacific. Attu proved that every front, no matter how remote, mattered in the global effort. Today, the Battle of Attu is one of the lesser-known chapters of World War II, yet its significance endures. It was the only land battle of the war fought on incorporated American territory, and a stark reminder that the conflict reached U.S. soil. The island now stands mostly silent, its rugged terrain scattered with weathered artifacts and solemn memorials. Few visitors make the long journey to Attu, but those who do walk among echoes of extraordinary resilience. The soldiers who endured the cold isolation and immense hardship demonstrated a level of determination that deserves recognition. Their service ensured that no part of the homeland would remain in enemy hands. Remembering Attu means honoring the courage of those who faced not only a distant adversary, but also some of the harshest conditions in military history. It is a story of quiet sacrifice, and one that should never be forgotten.